The Galactic Union had spoken, a unanimous vote. Every species, from the cold-blooded Valari to the hive-minded ZYYDH, agreed that humanity was too dangerous to be free. They were unpredictable, violent, and refused to conform to the established order of the galaxy. The decision was made. Earth would be enslaved. The fleets arrived in overwhelming numbers, blotting out the skies of every major city. Resistance was expected but futile. The Union had conquered hundreds of worlds before. Humanity would be no different. But they were wrong. The first mistake was underestimating humanity's will to fight. The second was thinking they would fight conventionally. The war wasn't one of fleets and armies. It was fought in the shadows, in sabotage, in sheer unrelenting defiance. The Dralshik learned it first when their command ships started vanishing, one by one. Entire battalions went dark. Their ships found adrift. Their crews slaughtered in ways too horrific to describe. The ZYYTH, who prided themselves on controlling information, found their own networks turned against them. Their encrypted battle plans were broadcast openly. Their leaders assassinated before they could issue commands. The Union's forces collapsed faster than anyone could have predicted. Humanity fought without honor, without restraint. They did not adhere to the ancient codes of war followed by the other species. They used deception, guerrilla warfare, and tactics so ruthless they were labeled war crimes in every known civilization. But to humanity, it was just survival. The final blow came when Earth unleashed something the Union had never encountered before: psychological warfare. They sowed fear like a virus. They captured high-ranking officers and returned them, shaking, broken, unable to speak of what they had endured. They sent messages to the remaining fleets, not demanding surrender, but warning them, one by one. The species that had voted for humanity's enslavement now begged for mercy, but there was none to be found. The Galactic Union fractured, species turning on each other in desperation to escape humanity's wrath. Some fled to the deepest reaches of space, abandoning entire colonies just to avoid what was coming. Others surrendered completely, offering reparations, swearing loyalty, anything to be spared. But Earth did not forgive. The universe had declared war on humanity, and humanity had won. The fall of the Galactic Union was not swift. It was a slow, excruciating unraveling. Fear had taken root, deeper than any war had ever scarred them before. The species that once stood tall, dictating the rules of the galaxy, now cowered like beaten animals. Humanity did not attack with grand fleets or declare official wars. They had no need. They had already won the battle of the mind. Entire planets surrendered without a shot fired, their leaders broadcasting desperate pleas for forgiveness, hoping, praying, that Earth's wrath would pass them by. It did not. The Valari, who had been the first to propose humanity's enslavement, suffered first. Their homeworld, once a shining capital of the Union, fell into chaos as assassinations and riots ripped through its cities. Food shipments stopped. Entire districts collapsed into anarchy. The humans never needed to invade. They let the Valari destroy themselves. The ZYYTH, the so-called masters of information, found their own minds turned against them. Their hive leaders, once united in thought, suddenly splintered. Whispers of betrayal spread like a plague. Each node of their vast intelligence network believing the others had already sided with humanity. They fought amongst themselves in paranoia until their great empire was nothing but shattered pieces. And then there were the Dralshik, a warrior species proud and unyielding. They vowed to resist, to fight to the last soldier. They sent their fleets to Earth in one final act of defiance. Not a single ship returned. No one knew what had happened to them. No distress calls, no wreckage. Just silence. The Dralshik homeworld, upon hearing the news, collapsed into terror. Entire cities emptied as millions fled to the stars, hoping to find refuge somewhere beyond humanity's reach. There was none. Humanity had become the nightmare that haunted every species in the galaxy. The lesson was clear. Earth was never meant to be enslaved. It was never meant to be conquered. The Union had tried to break humanity, and in doing so, they had shattered themselves. And yet, Earth remained silent. No grand declarations of victory. No demands for power. Just silence. That was what terrified them the most, because no one knew what humanity wanted, and no one knew when they would strike next. Panic spread across the remnants of the Galactic Union like wildfire. Entire civilizations collapsed under the weight of their own fear. Some species begged for forgiveness, sending desperate envoys to Earth, offering wealth, resources, anything to be spared. But Earth did not respond. That silence was worse than any threat. The Union's former rulers, once drunk on their own power, now faced sleepless nights haunted by the same question. What does humanity want? They had expected a conqueror's demands, tribute, territory, submission. But humanity had made no such claims. Their fleets remained hidden, their leaders unseen, their messages non-existent. But that did not mean they were gone. Stories began to spread, colonies vanishing without a trace, ships entering human-controlled space, only to return days later, their crews unrecognizable, hollow-eyed, shivering, whispering about horrors they refused to describe. An intercepted distress call from the Thalrex homeworld spoke of an unseen enemy infiltrating their cities, striking in the night, leaving nothing but corpses and messages scrawled in their own blood. You voted for this. The galaxy now understood. Humanity was not interested in ruling. They were not conquerors. They were punishers. The Valari were the first to try and make amends. Their new leader, Supreme Chancellor Zyros, declared that humanity would be given the highest seat in the new galactic order. They would be worshipped as the dominant force in the universe, their name spoken with reverence. But Earth never responded. Instead, Zyros was found dead in his private chambers the next morning. His personal guards never saw an intruder. His security feeds showed nothing. The only sign that humanity had been there was a single, chilling message carved into his desk. We don't need your titles. We don't need your praise. We remember other species tried to flee. The once mighty Dralshik scattered to the far edges of the galaxy, hiding in uncharted space. They changed their names, abandoned their history, hoping that distance would make humanity forget. Humanity did not forget. One by one, they were found, entire outposts reduced to nothing but drifting debris. The last transmission from a Dralshik warlord was a broken, static-filled message. We surrender. We, please. We were only following orders. We, asterisk, asterisk, silence. By now, the remaining leaders of the Union knew the truth. There would be no negotiations, no treaties, no second chances. Every species that had voted to enslave Earth would suffer. The only question left was when. The galaxy had never known fear like this. Wars had been fought before. Empires had risen and fallen. Civilizations had faced extinction. But nothing, not the wrath of the ancient Zyphar warlords, not the genocidal cleansing of the Zyrex swarm, compared to what humanity had become. They were ghosts in the dark, shadows that struck without warning, punishers with no mercy. Entire star systems fell silent. The Valari homeworld, once a beacon of power and influence, was now a graveyard. Cities left abandoned, streets littered with the remains of those who had tried to run. The few survivors were left alive only to spread the message. We remember. The ZYYTH fared no better. Their once mighty information network, an empire built on control, was now a trap turned against them. They prided themselves on knowing everything, yet now they knew nothing. Their security codes failed without explanation. Their spies reported back with cryptic warnings before disappearing. Their leaders barricaded themselves inside their fortified stations, trusting no one, fearing that the humans had already gotten inside. And, of course, they had the ZYYTH High Matriarch, the most powerful figure in their society, was found in her private quarters, eyes wide in terror, her throat cut by her own clawed hand. There were no signs of struggle, no forced entry, just a single message written on the walls in her own blood. We see you. Across the galaxy, the remaining species of the shattered Union fell into disarray. Those who had once voted for Earth's enslavement now face annihilation, not from open war, but from the sheer, relentless nature of humanity's vengeance. The Dralshik, once warriors without fear, had been hunted to near extinction. Their mighty fleets lay in ruins, their homeworld abandoned. Some war bands attempted to fight back, forming desperate coalitions, but it was useless. Humanity did not fight in open battle. They infiltrated, they sabotaged, they struck from the shadows, from within. A Dralshik fleet commander once boasted that his warship was impenetrable. He was found floating outside the ship's airlock days later, his body frozen solid, his ship's entire crew having slaughtered each other in a madness-induced bloodbath. No one knew how humanity had done it. No one dared to ask. Now, the remaining species faced an impossible choice. Flee to the farthest reaches of the universe, where even the Union had never explored, or stay and beg for mercy that would never come. Some tried to surrender. A council of high-ranking officials from multiple species, the last remnants of the old Galactic Union, sent a desperate envoy to Earth. They gathered the most powerful leaders, the wealthiest beings, those with the greatest influence, and sent them with one final plea. The envoy's ship arrived in orbit over Earth. They broadcast their message on all frequencies, their voices shaking as they promised reparations, swore loyalty, begged for understanding. No response. For hours, they waited in agonizing silence. Then, finally, a single transmission came through. One voice, a human voice. Calm, cold, unforgiving. You voted for this. The transmission ended. The envoy's ship was never heard from again. The silence after that final transmission shattered what little hope remained in the galaxy. The envoy, filled with the most powerful leaders of the Union's surviving species, had vanished without a trace. No distress call, no wreckage, no last words, just gone. The message was clear: humanity did not negotiate. Humanity did not forgive. Panic swept through the remnants of the Union like wildfire. Entire governments collapsed overnight. Worlds that had once ruled the stars now lay abandoned, their leaders fleeing into exile. The last remnants of the Dralshik, the once feared warriors, abandoned their fleets and scattered across the stars, desperate to disappear. But it didn't matter. Humanity was patient. One by one, the surviving architects of Earth's enslavement were found. No matter how deep they burrowed into the shadows of the universe, no matter how many names they changed, no matter how many bodyguards they hired, it was never enough. The former Supreme Chancellor of the Valari, who had once stood before the Galactic Union and demanded humanity's submission, was discovered on an uncharted moon in the Outer Rim. He had spent years in hiding, surrounding himself with mercenaries, living in a fortress buried beneath the surface. They still found him. His fortress was untouched. His security systems remained active. Yet, when his guards checked his quarters one morning, they found him sitting upright in his chair, his lifeless eyes locked onto the communicator in front of him. A message had been carved into the table before him, written in his own trembling hand. We don't forget. No signs of forced entry. No alarms triggered. No security footage of an intruder. The ZYYTH, the self-proclaimed masters of intelligence, fared no better. Their ruling council, who had once orchestrated the propaganda justifying Earth's enslavement, had fled deep into the unknown regions of space, beyond the reach of any known civilization. Or so they thought. Their last transmission was intercepted, their encrypted coordinates broadcasted across the shattered remains of their empire. By the time anyone arrived, there was nothing left but a derelict ship, floating in the void, its interior painted with the blood of those who had sought refuge within. The only message left behind was scrawled across the ship's main console. You thought distance would save you. The galaxy now understood. This was not a war. It was not a campaign of conquest. This was a reckoning. There were no fleets blotting out the skies, no grand invasions, no formal declarations of war. Humanity did not need them. They were not interested in ruling the galaxy. They were interested in justice. And there was nowhere left to run. The few remaining species that had not been involved in Earth's enslavement watched in silent horror. They had not cast their votes that day, had not raised their voices in support of humanity's chains, and now they understood how fortunate they had been. But there was one final question lingering in the void. When the last conspirator was gone, when the final betrayer had been erased, what would humanity do next? Would they stop? Or had the galaxy awakened something far worse? Something that would never sleep again. The galaxy was silent. What had once been a thriving network of civilizations, stretching across the stars, was now little more than a collection of broken worlds, abandoned stations, and drifting wreckage. Those who had conspired against humanity were all but gone, erased, hunted to extinction, or reduced to trembling shadows hiding in the darkest corners of space. But Earth remained quiet. That was what terrified the surviving species the most. Humanity had not expanded. They had not conquered. They had not seized power for themselves. The great fleets of the Union had been obliterated, but no human armada replaced them. The thrones of fallen empires lay empty, yet no human emperor rose to take them. They had simply vanished back into the void. The few remaining civilizations held their breath, waiting. They sent probes, envoys, and desperate messages to Earth's system. Each met with nothing but silence. Some feared that humanity had retreated, exhausted from their vengeance. Others feared something far worse, that they were merely watching, waiting. And then a single message was broadcast across every surviving world, every remaining fleet, every hidden station. It was brief. Let this be a lesson. Never again. That was the last time the galaxy ever heard from Earth. For years, no human ships were seen beyond their own system. No colonies expanded. No ambassadors spoke. They had done what no species had ever done before. They had walked away. The surviving civilizations did not celebrate. They did not dare. Instead, they rebuilt in quiet fear, knowing that the ghost of humanity's wrath still lingered in the void, watching, waiting, remembering. And so the galaxy learned its lesson. For centuries to come, there was one law that no species dared to challenge, a rule whispered in every political hall, every war council, every colony that dared to expand. Leave Earth alone. Centuries passed, but the scars remained. The once mighty galactic union was now a cautionary tale, its ruins scattered across the stars, a grim reminder of what had happened to those who had conspired against Earth. Entire planets lay abandoned, their cities overtaken by time. The few surviving species whispered legends of humanity's vengeance, teaching their young a single, sacred lesson. Never provoke Earth. Trade routes carefully avoided human space. No explorer dared to chart a course toward Sol. The maps of the galaxy marked Earth's system with a single warning: do not approach. And yet, curiosity is a curse. A lone expedition, young, arrogant, and ignorant of history, decided to test the silence. A crew of scholars and explorers from a new generation, born long after humanity's wrath, convinced themselves that the stories were exaggerations. They sent a single probe, just a small machine, no weapons, no threat. It never returned. Undeterred, they sent a manned vessel, carefully approaching the edge of the Sol system. As they neared, their instruments failed. Their navigation systems spun wildly, unable to pinpoint their location. Then, one by one, the crew began to disappear. No alarms, no warnings, no struggle. The captain, alone in the cockpit, sent a final distress call, his voice trembling. Asterisk, we were wrong. The stories were true. They never left. They're still watching, and now they know we. Asterisk. Static. The ship was found drifting weeks later, all systems dead, its crew missing. There were no signs of a struggle, no damage. Only one thing was different. A single message had been carved into the hull, deep enough to last for eternity. We remember, the galaxy did not need another warning. From that day forward, no one ever entered human space again. The legend of Earth became myth. Generations passed, and the horrors of humanity's wrath faded into history. The children of the galaxy were taught the warnings, but as time moved on, skepticism crept in. Some believed humanity had died out, consumed by their own fury. Others whispered that Earth had ascended beyond the stars, leaving behind only ghosts. Yet no one dared to find out. The galactic map still bore the same message. Do not approach. Spacefaring civilizations flourish once more, but they flourish carefully. Wars were waged. Alliances rose and fell, but one unspoken law remained. Earth was not to be touched. Then one day, an anomaly was detected, near the border of forgotten human space. Deep in the void where no ship had dared travel in centuries, an unknown signal pulsed through the darkness. It was old, ancient by galactic standards, but unmistakably human. A single transmission, broadcast across the stars. No one could decipher its origin, nor its purpose. Scientists, historians, and leaders from across the galaxy gathered, analyzing the message with fear and fascination. It was a simple phrase, spoken in a language long thought lost. Are you still watching? Panic swept through the surviving civilizations. Had humanity returned? Had they ever truly left? Was this a warning or a test? No one knew, but no one dared to respond. The silence that followed was absolute. Every species in the galaxy came to the same conclusion. If humanity was still watching, it was best to let them be.